If you're in a business like mine, I think 6 months ago, you were maybe a little bit worried about AI. I've never been more excited to show up to work and wake up every morning. I just get up and I'm doing stuff so much faster and so much more enriched and deeper and there's so many things going on. It's more fun than it's ever been. But the people I know who at least started it for just the money, they tend to disappear because there's other ways to go get money, And I think if you don't love the game you're in, then it's probably not going to work long term. Make sure you have the data to be able to make a good decision all the way through, because it's easy to get delusional and to miss when you probably should be making a pivot and you're not.
So I was hoping you could tell us a little bit about what your business is and kind of your experience in business and entrepreneurship from, your early days till now.
Sure. So right now, CAXI is a digital transformation company. So we do a lot of consulting around how to help companies figure out where everything from process analysis and value stream mapping, how do we really optimize how business works, and then develop technology around that. And then we do a lot of product development. So we've built a lot of SaaS products. We do a lot of, sort of more kind of complex web and other back office and mobile design and development. And been doing that for 25 years. And I think the key is, and this may be true of any, I think, successful entrepreneurship endeavor, the core of what we've done has completely changed at least 5 times in those 25 years. And being technologies, when you think about the eras of technology, right? When we started out, we were, hand coding websites from scratch in Notepad, and now we're all using Claude to do things in a heartbeat. So we have to my goal has always been sort of be at the upper right of that graph where it's we're at the cutting edge, front edge of what's happening right now that people maybe don't have completely figured out. And then as consultants, we can plug in, help you out, move forward and move on.
Yeah. Right. So I'm curious, just off that, how have you seen and how have you stayed up to date on all the changes that have happened over the last 25 years? Because as you said, technology moves so fast. It's the fastest moving industry. So,
there's a couple of things. There's one thing I did okay and one thing I did really poorly that I'd only recently started doing. And the first one is just be aware of the news. It's kind of a dumb, why wouldn't you? But honestly, I'm a pretty big Reddit user. And so paying attention to what's happening in a lot of different sectors, both with technology and also in your client sector. So we do a lot of things in manufacturing, casinos, and financial services. I want to keep up to speed with what's happening there. And honestly, one of the things, recently that I've noticed is, when you use a Claude tool or something, Claude seems to know about a lot of cool things that I don't know about. So when I look at, what are the new tools for, prospecting or, the data enrichment or all those kind of things, it's going to find some tools that are out there because we always want to recommend something that exists as opposed to building from scratch. And so I feel just kind of staying up on the news is kind of job one. The other one that I didn't do enough of, I feel like a moron, is go to the conferences. And I think if you're a startup, if you're a founder, there is kind of a tendency to sort of lurch into, I'm working 80 hours a week and I sleep at the
100%.
office. I don't do anything. And I didn't go to anything for years. And also you go to the conference, you pick up the idea there. And that's a cool thing. I was going to build that, but someone already built that, and really just kind of staying part of the community. And then I think the add-on effect is, then you go back every couple of years and you start to develop relationships, and maybe you see these people 3 times, for 3 days, once a year, but you're going to start getting plugged into the industry more. And I think that's really valuable. And I started way too late.
Oh, that's super interesting. And like you said, a lot of early stage entrepreneurs are just worried about the work, right? About just grinding it out. And I think that is definitely something that a lot of people don't look into, is going to those places. You said you work with casinos. That's super interesting. What do you work with casinos with?
So we do a lot of back office, building the systems that a casino might run on. It's our fastest growing and kind of most interesting sector right now. And we focus a lot on the player loyalty, player management. So, like any other business, they have customers that walk in and they could choose to go somewhere else. And interestingly, with a casino, kind of maybe in a way like a restaurant. If you're a restaurant, that when people walk down the street, they can go to your place, the Italian place, the Greek place, whatever, and you've got to sort of fight for that customer. And so casinos have to do the same thing. And so knowing who your customers are helps them. So I don't know about you, where you are in Orlando, if you think about, there's probably 3 or 5 or 10 casinos within an hour drive, and they want you to come theirs today and every time. Right. And so how do you do that? So it's, hey, it's Barrett. He likes, this thing or this drink or whatever it is. Make sure he's got that. And, he really likes the free play versus a free dinner, and just knowing your customer. So when you come in, you feel like you're welcome. You feel like it's a good time, and that helps you choose that one over something else. And so it's a really, it's an exciting business to be in because they're kind of recession proof and good people and, a growth industry, that kind of thing. So we got into that probably about 8 years ago, and it's been growing, and it's a big vertical for us now.
Interesting. So is that like algorithms that knows the person and then it
Yeah,
uses the
yeah,
algorithm to
yeah.
interesting. So that's the whole thing.
Yeah, so like really like doing it like this is where data can really do customer service people a lot of favors. It's like really understanding like what worked both at a group or a segment kind of level. So the this kind of demographic generally does X, but also like this person does something, and so like that's something that's really not possible without data, without AI in some way, because it'd be too hard for someone to kind of go through it, and it's a task a person can never do well. Whereas AI can just kind of surface the thing that works right away, and also now you look like a genius because you've got this AI sort of enhancing what you're doing.
Right. Interesting. So you said you've been in the business for over 25 years. How big is your team now? Do you have a team working with you?
Yeah, for about 40-ish, something like that. All US is something we have kind of pushed for a long time. I find with more complex things you have to do in business, just the time zone and cultural differences alone make things a little difficult. It's really rare that I've had someone go, "Oh my God, I'm so glad we had this done overseas." Like it's usually like, "Oh my God, it was really difficult. It was a nightmare. It took too long. It was cheaper per hour, but took 4 times as long. And so did we even save anything?" That's sort of our usual go to market against that.
Interesting. So do you think that's for most businesses out there that that would be stay true, bringing in overseas people to work in your company?
I mean, it's a so obviously grain of salt. So if you're listening to this, I'm obviously selling against this. So, I'm sure there's another side to this. I feel like there's a whole group of things that got sent overseas that were probably good to send. And as a sidebar, I think those are the things that are most at risk to AI right now. So if you think about like accounting services sent, bookkeeping overseas because on like a per hour basis, it was easier to have, 100 people at whatever it is an hour cranking through stuff,
Right.
right? Well, now I kind of think that maybe that's something that AI can do pretty well, maybe even better. And in fact, our bookkeeper, we had we had trouble with our overseas team through the bookkeeping group where something was landing in a different category every month. And it's like we're always having to fix it. Like, what's going on? And if you track it down, it's because, well, depending on who got the shift that day, this person was putting in this category, this person was putting in something else. When AI is going to knock that out. So if I'm that bookkeeping company overseas, I'm pretty worried that AI is going to do a better job. To your question about like, when does it make sense to bring someone in? I feel like if you're, there's a lot of news about how so and such company is wiping out this whole job, and there's going to be no financial analysts and there's no junior developers. All these jobs are going away. And then if you do that, and then you fast forward 6 months, those same people are trying to hire everyone back because it didn't work. Like that's not how you do this. And so, with our team, I would argue if you've got anything that requires real thought and judgment, and which jobs don't really, that's going to require someone who gets you in your business. And I've just found it's harder. That's a harder ask when you have a time zone, cultural zone. Just have
Mhm, mhm.
that kind of gap. You end up in cycles, and I thought we just talked about that. And you said you understood, and then thing came back and it was totally different. That's not what I asked for. That loop, if that sounds familiar to you, that's the problem. You have a problem that's too tough to send overseas if that happens.
Right, interesting. So talking about teams kind of off that point, when did you start bringing in other people to work in your company?
So if we get into it, our origin story is pretty idiotic. We were not prepared to be in business. It was, I mean, like, I can't believe the people who supported us did because we were complete fools for multiple years. And so it was probably just me and my partner for at least, I want to say like 18 months, 2 years. And then through dumb blind luck, we placed a paper ad in a newspaper that eventually got answered by someone. And it wasn't even by the customer. A customer called another agency and said, "Hey, we saw this ad. That looks interesting. Do you guys do that?" They tried to go around us. And the agency said, "Actually, no, we should call them up." And it was like we used to do a lot of like animation stuff back in the day. And so we ended up, our first customer ended up being Citibank. So it was like just from 0 to 1,000 in a heartbeat. But
Yeah.
if that ad didn't work, we wouldn't be here talking today, I bet.
Interesting. So you kind of said you went from 0 to 1,000. I think that's a super interesting topic because for like early stage entrepreneurs, it's when you start getting in that role, right? You find your target market and you have people coming in wanting your service. It's tough to like maneuver around all those people and get the work done for everyone. So how was that for y'all going from 0 to 1,000? Was it really tough?
It was, and I will say, like, when I think about my business, over the years, there's probably been like 5 or 6 like real heavy spikes that we've had, and we got progressively better at it. But the first spike almost killed us. The second spike almost killed us, and I think that what happens is, as an entrepreneur, So I believe on like in mindset and the idea that like, if you're standing at the free throw line and you're thinking, I think I'm going to make this versus I'm never going to make this, the chances that the first person makes the shot are a lot higher. Right. And so I feel like I feel like the right mindset is I think you want to be prepared for growth from a people point of view first. And so the entrepreneur mindset generally is, well, I don't know, let's wait. Let's wait to hire and we'll see what happens. And then what ends up happening is you get the work, you do the work poorly because you're overmatched, and then you don't get add-on work, and now you're back to where you started. Whereas if you invest a little more in people, good people, and excuse me, and you get the work, you do a great job, and now you're able to grow. And so I think we failed on that. The first two of the five or six of those that happened. And I was a real contributor, when we started. So I was a developer, and I was working, 24-hour day. I think there's one stretch where I stayed up 6 days in a row and started seeing stars. Like and that you're not getting your best work on day six of not sleeping, right? And so
Even
like,
day 4, right?
right, right. And so it's just it's pretty rough. I feel like the advice I would give someone is like get the people so you're ready for it. And you should know. Here's the other thing: you should have your pipeline tuned in such a way that it shouldn't be like a giant surprise, right? And so especially if you're like a SaaS business or something where leads are coming in online, you're seeing your deal flow. And while you could probably work on your sales process and strategy and all the other kind of stuff, like you just saw that there was a 50% uptick in, clicks, this past month. It was probably time to hire last month. You know what I mean? So I feel like that's a piece of advice I didn't figure out for a long time.
Interesting. So kind of off that, I'm just curious. When do you think there's a barrier there between, okay, I'm not making enough money, not enough cash flow to hire somebody on, but I really could use the help? Where like do you think you should just up your prices, or how does that dilemma go, you
Well,
think?
so I think what we're getting is I think there's two things. I think there's like the bootstrap side of if you're paying for this out of cash, which is what we did when we started. We didn't have any like real investors of any kind of scale. We had some like friends and family money just to pay for rent and food. And I think there's that thing like, well, I don't have the money for this, and there's something very real to that. So in a way, like, don't be afraid to raise your prices. I find that, I mean, I could be wrong. I feel like 100% of startups don't charge enough. And so don't be afraid to charge what it's really going to cost, because if you sell it and it's underwater or break even, then you're going to be worse off than when you started. And like, in the first few years of the company, there were projects that we would have been financially better off if we just never did. If we just sat in our hands for 3 months and didn't do that project, we would have been better off. And so like, I feel like pricing it so that you can actually make the money is important. And then, if you're literally super early on and something new comes in that like you can't quite afford to do, I might advocate for just being honest with the customer and be like, listen, I need 50% up front because we need to hire and get the best people here to make sure that we serve you well and develop enough trust that someone buys into that. I mean, it's a risk. It's always a risk, but I mean, I feel like the benefit of doing great work outweighs the risk of, losing it and, losing face in front of the customer.
Right, right. Because I think that's another dilemma that you get into when you face that is, am I going to provide more value than I'm taking from the other person, right? Because I mean that's what business is. So yeah, no, that's super interesting. So kind of moving on, what is what are some of the biggest mistakes you think you see first time founders make in their first years of business?
A big one that I learned was hiring is hard, and the things you think you know about hiring, and that this idea of like conventional wisdom, the things you've heard are almost all wrong. And the problem I had is I got super lucky. My first 4 or 5 hires were awesome, and they were great people. They did great work, and I was like, oh man, I'm a genius. I don't know what people are talking about with hiring is difficult, whatever. And then like my next six were all just complete whiffs. And one of the things I've gotten into in the last, I don't know, 8 or 10 years is maybe a little controversial, but I really, really like skill testing and like personality profiles and stuff like that, because I think there's a tendency for anyone in general, but founders included, to hire people they like. Like, and if you're like me and you score high on a test where it's like, people who are good in front of people and like to talk and all that kind of stuff. If I meet someone like that, then I'm probably going to like them, and I'm going to probably lean in toward hiring that person. Well, they might not be the best fit for the job. Like a lot of our work in development, you need someone who's like diligent and detail oriented and thoughtful and deliberate and all these kind of things that I'm kind of not. And so, if I hired all people like me, we would not be able to deliver the work that we do. And so really like coming up with like what you're really looking for. And I think investing in those tests are really, really worth it, like Skill Finder and Disc and that kind of stuff. And I feel like there's been things where they've been debunked as like not being completely accurate, all that kind of stuff. I'd say nothing's completely accurate, and it's more accurate than you and your gut is kind of what I have found. And then also on that point, speaking of gut, if your gut says you're not sure, trust it because you're probably right.
Right. No, I think that's super interesting too. Talking about gut feeling in business, I've heard that gut feeling is one of the most important instincts you could go off in business for sure.
Yeah. Surely on the negative side. If you have a gut like I don't know about this, you're right.
No, that's super interesting. So you think your first hires, you said that you killed it in the first ones and then you got the next half were not great. Do you think it was complacency in a sense, or do you think you were just really trying to find people that you just found people that you liked and then they didn't end up having those traits that you needed?
You ask it in a really good way that in all this time I didn't really think about it that way. I think I always thought about it as I just got lucky. It's possible because it was my first few hires. I was dialed into like this has to be right. That could be true, but I think over the long haul, it's been more like if I go with my gut, not if I go with my I like this person, which is I think different than gut. I've been 50-50, and I would argue most people are. And I think it's I honestly I don't even know if I believe in the here are the great questions to ask. I think it's you really got to find out what motivates a person and why this job is something they're going to be interested in over the near and short term and long term. Because anyone can show up great for the first 30 days, and now you're in the job. And is this really for you? In fact, I remember we had one guy. This is like the funniest thing that ever happened to me. I had a guy I hired to be like a senior project manager, and he had a business before. And so he was coming from, I'm running a business, I'm coming in here, and I was like, are you sure you want to go work for someone? Because like that's a big switch, right? He said, no, I talked with my family. This is the right thing to do for me. It's great. And I saw the guy come in the next day, and he walked in. He sat down at his desk. He looked around. He looked left. He looked right, and he got up and left. And I didn't hear from him again for years. And then just randomly, I saw him on the street, and I don't know why I recognized him because I only met him once, and then the 30 seconds at the office, I'm like, is that the guy? And we exchanged like a little bit of a, how you doing, nod, whatever, and on we went. But it was just like a crazy thing. So I don't know. Hiring is more difficult than people give it credit for.
No, and I hear a lot of the world's best entrepreneurs talk about how hiring is the number one job a founder does kind of once they get out of that beginning stage, you know what I mean? Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I do. And I learned a hack that I really like is in a way, actually the most important job of the founder is to fire the people who don't fit. Because it's really hard, like we've been talking about, it's hard to get the right people in. You can up your percentages, you can do a little bit better, but the most important thing you can do is if someone isn't a fit, you have to help them find somewhere else to be because it's not going to work. I think that's and the whole like hire slow, fire fast thing. I really really believe in you. If you have people in your company you don't like, they shouldn't be there, and it's on you that they're still there.
That makes sense. All right, cool. Kind of switching lanes a little bit. How do you think somebody would know when an idea can become an actual business versus an idea that doesn't scale?
I love this question because being in software and product development, SaaS development, we get a lot of people that come to us with ideas, and I think the most common bad idea we hear is someone comes with an idea that they like and they haven't talked to any potential customers. And I think the number one job of a business is to understand who you serve and why they care and why they would buy it from you. And so we see a lot of ideas that are like, I mean, I guess that's interesting, but like, how big is that market? Would anyone care? Does something already exist that does that? I mean, I guess it would be cool, but like, it's not really like fitting a need. And when I think about the entrepreneurs we work with who just like, go gangbusters and then grow and sell and like, do really well, they solve like a really big unmet need that they tested and figured out like that's actually worth pursuing. And hardly anyone does that.
No, I've heard so many entrepreneurs talk about that too on the podcast is, let's say you're in your first beginning stages, get out there, talk to the people and figure out if your business is actually going to solve a need for somebody. And if it can't, then you might as well not put any more time into it. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
that's for me starting my first business, it was like that too. I kind of just jumped into it, didn't ask anybody if the product was going to be something that they would actually buy. And I could see how that's super important to do actually. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I know this pivot word's a little bit cliche, but like the idea that if you get the feedback, you come back and readjust it, and you get more feedback, you come back and readjust it. That's a really important feedback loop. And if you listen to 100% of the feedback, you're going to end up with nothing probably. But like discerning feedback about, okay, this is still within our mission, or we can accomplish this. Don't start out as a travel site and end up as a bowling alley. Like keep it within zone. But like I feel like That's a really valuable piece of feedback. Sometimes the problem is they stick with that original mediocre idea for too long, and then it just sort of slowly dies.
Right. No, interesting. So kind of pivoting off that, early in your career, how did you deal and handle the loneliness and self-doubt that comes with being an entrepreneur and starting a business?
I would say that a lot of entrepreneurs I know, you kind of almost have to not have self doubt. And the advice I most often give people is the entrepreneurs that win are the ones that just don't quit. Let's be the last one to not quit. Like it's, there's a kind of a dumb cartoon that goes around every now and then with a guy like kind of like digging with like he's like mining for
Mhm,
something and he's
mhm, mhm.
right before
Yep.
the diamonds and he turns around.
And he
Like
turns around.
it's right. It's a little, I mean, it can be like self-destructive and delusional, but like you never you never know what's around the turn on the next day. I was telling you with our company, we placed these ads. I didn't even mention this, but it was a 3 month run of the ads, and it ran out. Like we were done. We were like literally getting ready to go to the U-Haul store to get boxes to pack it all up. And 10 days into month 4 is when they called. They had an old issue, right? And so the idea of like persevering, it's like my kids are really into sports, and one of them is doing really well and playing college football. And I remember having a conversation with a dad like 10 years ago, and he goes, it's not like any of our kids are going to play in college, whatever. And I'm like, well, that's why. It's if you were to say, my kid has a chance to go professional, or my kid doesn't have a chance to go professional, whichever one you say, you're right. Because if you say they don't have a chance, it's not going to happen. But if you say they have a chance, you at least open up the possibility. And I think that's that mindset as an entrepreneur. You just have to go into being like I'm burning the boats, like they have in that Greek myth. I'm burning the boats. We are staying here until we win. Otherwise, like I'm just not going to quit. That's the key.
And do you think that's the most defining idea that an entrepreneur can go with and see success in the future?
I do. I do because there's the lure of quitting is so attractive. Going back to that job or going back to work with your dad or whatever it is, like all those things, they're there. They're there every day. And unless you commit to just putting them in a box and just putting them over there and you're not going to go there, it's really hard to stay committed. And I think if anything, like, with the older entrepreneurs, then you've got family and kids and obligations. It's so hard. Like I totally sympathize. I was lucky I started when I was relatively young and was able to do some things, but like it's not easy. It's not for everyone. But I do think that if you stay committed and don't quit and keep that feedback loop and learning, if you're at all a smart person, you're going to figure out the thing that works and just do more of that. Like there is a recipe, and I do think it's a good way to put it. I think that's the core idea.
No, that makes sense. So what's one thing you think a new entrepreneur underestimates the most about running a business?
That's a good question. I think when I think about things that people underestimate, I think there's that mindset about like I'm going to succeed, and there's also overestimating your pipeline and underestimating how hard it is to get customers. And so we're in a service business, so it's more like leads and a sales process. Where if you have like a restaurant or a bakery, it's like do people come in the door, all that kind of stuff. I think that you can believe in your idea so much that you're immune to the feedback about like, hey, this is actually not working or this is a problem. So like in a way, if the question is what do people underestimate, maybe make sure you have the data to be able to make a good decision all the way through, because it's easy to get delusional and to miss when you probably should be making a pivot and you're not.
No, that's so true. And I think I've heard a few people talk about how, in business, don't listen to other people, kind of just go with what you think is gonna work out. And kind of like you say, that might not be the best way to do it, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because if you're familiar with this idea of the survivorship bias, it's like you look at someone like Warren Buffett and you're like, oh, he must be the best investor of all time. Is he, or is he the one who got the 50 coin flips in a row right? I don't know. And so if you're Steve Jobs, like famously, he's like, we're just gonna make the iPhone with one button and it's gonna be really simple. And he famously says like, you can't ask people what they want, you have to tell them what they want. Well, he got it right. And I would say but most people don't. And so, believing your idea at the expense of not taking any feedback, unless you're Steve Jobs or Warren Buffett, is not going to work out for you. And so those are tough people to have as like avatars that you follow, because they're either extremely brilliant or extremely lucky or both. And that's not a winning strategy for everybody, I think.
100%, 100%. So if a new entrepreneur has limited time because they're kind of side gigging their business, what do you think they should spend most of their time on to really maximize their business?
It's a really good question. So I think if you're gigging, what I would say is focus on getting the product or the service right, because it doesn't like do you any good to, for example, spend a bunch on ads for a product that's still buggy and kind of doesn't quite work. Like, get the product so right that people are begging you to release it or begging you to kind of do more of it. I know with service businesses, a lot of people end up, they do it on the side, and then they get that one big anchor client that allows them to quit. Maybe, I think that's a pretty good path. But like, get your service right to where people are begging you, I think is probably a good road to go down.
Interesting, interesting. So, where do you think that line is where you're spending most of your time on the product, let's say, as opposed to maybe, like you said, getting out in the community, figuring out the feedback loop, you know what I mean?
Yeah. If I had to pick, I would say I would go 80-20 product and everything else. So, don't disappear, but going out and doing networking and then your product still isn't done or you're not sure how you're going to market it is not great either. And I think if anything, here's I want to go back to underestimate because I feel like it was a great question and I kind of fouled it off a little bit. And I'm going to give you an actual hit here. I think the thing that I was thinking about is most entrepreneurs and businesses are afraid to to talk about the business or the offering in a niche. So most people want to be like, I'm in financial services. Well, who do you serve? Well, the young, the old, the rich, the poor, US, non-US, whatever. And so when someone asks them, like, who can you refer me to? They almost can't think of it, right? But if you're like, you know, I serve retired professional baseball players and maximizing their retirement income, then all of a sudden it's like, oh, well, I know exactly what you do, who you do it for. And actually, I think my friend from college know that. And all of a sudden you give them the thing to think about. It's that whole thing about like, when you buy a car, all you see is your car on the road. Like, once you have the idea in your head, you can find more of it. And I think too many people are trying to serve and do everything for everybody. And don't be afraid to go into your niche. And PS, I'm generally afraid to do that too. And every time I remember that and actually do it, it works like crazy. In fact, we talked about casinos early on in the conversation, and we've like really drilled into a few verticals as opposed to like we do anything for anybody. And a couple of years ago, I was talking to someone about it, and like a partner we work a lot with, I mentioned this too, and he goes, "Oh my god, I didn't know that." One of our partners focuses in that, and it'd been right in front of my face for like a long time. And because I didn't have the courage, is I think the right word. I didn't have the courage to go into the niche. People didn't know where to put us. Oh, they do software for businesses. Like, that's too general.
Mhm.
You really got to get into a niche. I think that's where people miss.
Interesting. So when you talk about getting into a niche, how do you think people can find their niche? Is it going out and talking to people and deciding what it is your product is going to be really good at, or how should people go about that? You
Yeah, I
think?
mean, I think there are probably some natural tendencies, right? So if you've got like something special about you that is interesting to people and that can guide you toward a market, like, I was a musician for a long time, so like I always, whenever I meet someone who plays guitar, I'm instantly friends with them, right? And so like use that to your advantage. I did when I was doing my podcast for about a year. I just interviewed CEOs who are musicians. It was a lot of fun and great, and then I ran out of people. But like that was really great. It was too small of a niche, right? But I think like if you're thinking about your product, like, don't be afraid. Like, like you think about a really general product like uh, like Excel. Like, Excel is for everybody. And so I know that's not a great example. I'm trying to think of like a business. Like, if you're a caterer and you say we make food for weddings, it's really not super compelling. But if you're like, we are the best Greek food wedding wedding caterer in the city, all of a sudden you get all the Greek weddings. You know what I mean? Because it's like you can see how it's just a little more compelling of a message. And I
Right.
think that can apply to just about anything. Like, if you're, especially like SaaS products, pick the industry you're great at and dig in, and then you can win.
Interesting. And like you said, there's kind of that psychological switch where you say, okay, well, I don't really understand that fully, but then you put like Greek wedding caterer, and it's like anybody that is relatively thinking about having a Greek wedding cater, they're like, okay, that's the one person I could go to have that my needs met. No, that's super interesting. Okay, cool. We already asked that. Okay, so what habits or routines kept you sane and focused through the hard years of starting your business and building it through the 25 years?
You know, when I think about like what kept me going when things were tough is, I think it's important for your life in general to think about why you're doing what you're doing. And so if you're doing it to pay rent or make a little bit more money, then that lure that we were talking about of kind of like going back to the old job or going to work for the family or whatever your options are, going to wait tables, I don't know, whatever you think is in your future. You don't have enough of a compelling vision to give yourself that reason to keep going. And, for me, when I think about like, I'm looking at, I want I have a vision of a retirement kind of situation for me and my wife and things I want to do for my kids and that kind of stuff. I think that kind of thing keeps you going when things get dark. And, there's a routine I do once a year to create like a vision for, what does 1 year, 3 year, and 5 year, and 10 and 20 years look like? And they're fuzzier the farther you go out, but it creates some contrast for now between now and then that you can kind of go chase after.
Yeah, no, that's super interesting because I feel like entrepreneurs go through so many tough times, like you said, and kind of like you said, it's if you're just doing it for maybe just the money or whatever, it might be easier for you to go get a C-suite job at a bigger company, and you can kind of just ditch what you're doing now. So, what do you think was the number? What do you think was the reason you stuck it out for 25 years? Was it just the love of the game, or like what do you think it was?
I think it kind of might be love of the game. I love doing this. Like if I work on stuff on the weekends, it's because it's fun. And honestly, like as a kind of a weird side thing, if you're in a business like mine, I think 6 months ago, you're maybe a little bit worried about AI. I've never been more excited to show up to work and wake up every morning. I just get up and I'm doing stuff so much faster and so much like more enriched and deeper and like there's so many things going on. It's more fun than it's ever been. So again, if you don't love the game you're in, maybe change the game. But because I think again, the people I know who at least started it for just the money, they tend to like disappear because it's not. There's other ways to go get money. And I think if you don't love the game you're in, then it's probably not going to work long term. I've been doing this a long time, like half my life at this point. And when I think about like all the growth and the change and the people and the people we've served and the differences we've made, like it's really fulfilling. And there have been some tough times, but I mean, and I think I've been really lucky too, because the tough times never lasted too long. And like everyone had a couple times, wasn't sure I was going to make payroll, and then something showed up, and just like that could have broken a different way, right? And we wouldn't be here. So,
Right.
but so don't underestimate luck. But I do love what I'm doing.
Interesting. So do you think when I started my business, I kind of felt this too. It's like when you're down, there's always like a little something that kind of picks you up in the moment, right? Like there's that little
Yeah.
thing that kind of comes like you said, you thought you wouldn't be able to make payroll, and then a break happened and you were able to. That's super interesting.
Yeah, and it's like you can't like count on it. Like I don't like believe in like kind of
Of
a
course.
karma or something, whatever. It's like, but I think there's an idea that you make your own luck, and that as a strategy, if you have like a lot of things going, like so like in a couple times like that it got really dark, like it's not like I had one person that could have come through and paid. I had six. You know what I mean? So it's like you're trying to up your odds at all the time, and the one there's a quote I really like from Oprah, which is like, when opportunity knocks on the door, you have to have been spending your whole life getting ready to live up to the moment, and so you have to be ready for it. And so making your own luck is like we were talking about, make the product great, spend time on your hiring, all the things we talked about. Every one of those ups your chances 1%, right? So you just keep adding all these 1%, and all of a sudden, like I've gotten to a point now, I've done this long enough that, in a given month, we're gonna get 8 or 10 leads from people I know, just because I know tens of thousands of people. I don't know if it's tens of thousands, but it's at least 10,000. And so they're gonna show up, right? I've made that network happen. And that's kind of, I think that takes a while, but that's my take.
Interesting. So when you talk about getting leads in the door, do you think the best way is just from building those relationships and then having people refer in, or do you think it's a different way?
Yeah, I mean, I think in a service business, what I would advise people do is build your network, build your partnerships. The work that we get from people in complementary businesses is probably most of the work. And so, and if you think about it, we have our clients, and we can easily bring in other service providers to our clients because we know them and they trust us, and vice versa. So developing your partner network in a service business is crucial. And then I also think like having that marketing niche focus where, if you narrow your focus, you can broaden your market, like being like, we are the leaders, and like we're trying to make the claim right now. We get developing enterprise software, fast, secure, scalable with AI better than anybody else. Sure, people can make little AI toys on their own, but they're going to break, they're going to get broken into, all this kind of stuff. Like that's our go to market. And further we do it in these industries, casinos and fintech and construction and manufacturing. So like if you've got that going for you, that's how you play the odds to get more leads in the door. Because like advertising is okay, but especially in a service business, you probably make your decision on the person. And so a Google ad and a landing page is okay, but it's not as effective as the other.
No, that's so true, and it's like building those relationships, like you said, are in a service business are gonna take you way farther than an ad or anything like that, because you really are making the decision off the person,
Yeah.
especially in a smaller business, right?
Always, yeah. Yeah, that
Interesting,
thing about, like,
interesting,
the
cool.
people I mean, people buy from people is true. I think, one thing I invested a lot in the last 5 years has been, like, pretty intensive, like, sales training and understanding, like, the process of how people buy what we buy. I think that's a great investment for people that are in that world, and I think it's you learn that, especially in service businesses, most people try to solve the problem, and that the trick is actually to find the problem and talk about how big a deal it is to not fix it and how much it costs.
No, that's so true. I've heard that a bunch too. Is people talk about marketing being you show them the value, but really it's showing the problem and how big the problem is if you don't solve it, and then you get people
Yep,
in that feel that.
that's it. Yep.
Interesting.
It's
So
so
talking
easy
about
to say
sales.
and so hard to do.
Yeah, 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 100%. So kind of talking about sales, were you the salesperson when you first started your business? Were you or
No, I
was it your
wasn't.
co-founder?
I wasn't. So I was my other founder was the salesperson, and we ended up splitting on great terms, and I see him all the time. But I literally didn't think through the process of buying him out because the morning after I bought him out, I was like, "Oh my god, I'm the one that has to sell this stuff now." And I talk about this a lot that if my 20-year ago self would hear how excited I am to do sales, he would throw up because it's like that's not at all what we were trying to do or what we are all about.
Right.
It's become like I really love it. I love the idea of helping our clients find the right problems to solve and then solve them and get them a huge return from doing it.
Interesting. So you kind of talked about how your role has changed over the years. What are you doing nowadays, as opposed to when you first started? I'm guessing your role has changed.
Yeah, I think the role is more about the idea of finding like delivering our clients like a high consulting value about did we find a good problem, did we deliver on it, but really just really trying to grow the teams and empower other people. I think a lot of entrepreneurs start, at least my one of my hugest biggest problems was I'm not a great delegator, so I do a lot of stuff myself, and trying to like empower other people with fun and interesting things for them to do has been part of my mission. And so I'm trying to, in a way, I'm trying to get out of a job by figuring out how to explain what I'm doing and train other people to do it. I'm almost exclusively on like the sales and account and marketing side right now. I don't do any of the programming or delivery anymore, and that's super fun for me. And I think a lot of people, some of the famous business books are all about working on the business, not in it. And so I'm trying to
Right.
make that transition fully to working on it, and probably 90%.
Interesting. So you talk about how a lot of business books talk about transitioning to working on the business instead of in it. Where do you think that fine line is between when you first start, you obviously have to do everything in the business, and then there's
Yeah.
that fine line where you start working on the business?
You know, so I think the book that started that was The E-Myth by Michael Gerber, and in it, like the thing he says is to start by thinking systems. So instead of like just doing the work, like whatever you're doing, document how you do it. So that even if no one ever does it, as soon as someone comes in, it's like, here's how we do this part of the business. And his model was how McDonald's set up their whole production pipeline, and any franchise could just read the manual and do it. It's an interesting idea. And so for me, it's like if you were smart from day one, you're building how you will get out of doing it. And as soon as that first employee comes in, think about how much can I give this person a playbook to just run and get out of the way. It took me forever. I think so. If this is 25 years, I think probably 15 years it took me to get out of it.
Interesting,
Too long,
interesting.
way
Like,
too
I
long.
think I think that's super interesting talking about how day 1, you first start doing stuff, and then you could start documenting it. I mean, that's super tangible, and then once you have the facilities to bring somebody in, you could just give them it and let them run, right?
Sure, sure. And there's
No, that's super
probably a
interesting.
little bit of an AI epilogue to that book, which is if you could truly, fully document how to do something, maybe AI can do a lot of it. There's an
Right,
idea
right.
people are working.
Interesting. So, I kinda have some rapid fire questions here. Talking
Go for it.
about books, what's one book you believe every entrepreneur should read?
I think it's that E-Myth Revisited. It's a story, so it's not really it's a business book, but it's a story, so it's fun to read. It really spells it all out. It's from like the 80s, and so it feels like it could be out of date, and yet it's absolutely dead on perfect.
Interesting. Okay, cool. What do you think is the most underrated advantage an entrepreneur can cultivate today?
We are in a world where everyone's trying to figure out what AI is supposed to do, and I argue we don't actually know yet. Everything we're doing now is fun. It's a little trivial, to be honest, in a lot of ways. And the big idea hasn't arrived yet. But the people who are going to figure it out are going to be, I'm trying to use a cliche term. Let's just say AI native, meaning like you're thinking about how you're going to use AI in your role to get further and go faster and deliver a better experience and be more enriched, all that kind of stuff. Uh, don't be left behind. I can't imagine anyone is, but I still run into people who are like, I haven't tried, ChatGPT yet or whatever. And I did a podcast with someone yesterday who I don't think was a technical person, but she was talking about how she was building dashboards on Cloud Code. I'm like, that's it. That's how you do it. So try to stay in the front edges because it changes constantly, and you're gonna have to be aware of kind of the what's possible and stay up to date. But I think that's a core skill right now.
Interesting. What do you think is some of the biggest waste of money business owners can do in their first years of business?
So I think there's a tendency for, okay, this is maybe more of a confession, but maybe it's a tendency. I for sure like the idea of finding new clients, new logos, going out to new things all the time. And entrepreneurs overlook their current clients who are already spending money with them, who already will answer their phone calls and answer their emails. They're overlooking them to see what else they can help them with. Here's another book, Go for No, talks about a story about how a guy comes in to a suit store and asks for some new pants, and the salesperson sells him some pants, rings him up, sends him on his way. And the manager comes over and goes, "Did that guy want a shirt?" No, I didn't ask him. "Did he want a tie?" I didn't ask him. "Did he want a new jacket, cufflinks?" Like it's okay. Keep going until they say no. And then you check out, right? And so with your current customers, they're there buying stuff. The number of times I've had a customer say, "Well, I didn't even know you did that." Like, hey, we're doing, GEO now for like, so LLMs can see your website. I didn't know you did that. If I didn't bring it up, they would have found someone else, right? And then further, here's the hugely overlooked thing. There is a way to ask for a referral. If you've done a great job and your customer really likes you and they had a huge benefit from working with you, and you ask them, "Hey, on a scale of 1 to 10, am I referable? Like, how referable is that experience? Did you like that experience?" If it's a 9 or a 10, it's probably a pretty good idea to say, well, who else that you know who's like you, who'd want to share that, you'd want to share that experience with, and get 1 or 2 names. And all of a sudden now you've got a warm call to someone who already likes you. And we've all been on those. When you get a warm lead, it's like it's a layup. And when you
Right.
don't, it's like, shooting from half court at halftime. Like it's hard.
No, that's so true. All right, Mike. Well, I appreciate you. This podcast was great with a bunch of great business insights. I hope you stay in your business for another 20 years and it tops off. You know what I mean?
I appreciate it. Good and good luck to you. I love the work you're doing. It's really good stuff.
Appreciate you.